Hi, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you happenstance in this Truth Bomb Riff. My name is Patrick Lovell. I am the producer with the $71 trillion truth, and I'm recording this on Thursday, March 13th, 2025. And I'm compelled to do so because any of those of you who follow me know that 13 is kind of a big part of my diatribe, but I'm going to try to keep this close, and I'm going to record it in 13 minutes on a day in my neck of the woods where we've got stormy weather. Kind of looks like a crazy early winter, but it's springtime, and I guess spring is typically volatile. And God is our political landscape and the reality of our country in turmoil, to say the least, right? So I guess I'm inspired, given a lot of challenges that have happened today, because we got the recreate, the relook, the revamp, the reconfiguration of our website for the Clean New Deal completed today. And at some point soon, I'm going to do kind of one of those tutorials that I'll record. But that's not the point of now. The point of now is to try to pick up on what I'm seeing out there that I feel like I need to address, and then try to bring it full circle as quickly as I can to why we have to get on the same page as quickly as possible, and a couple of ideas that I have that will further both of our aims if you live for liberty and justice for all. Okay. So, right now, there is a smattering of protests that are happening all over the country. I got notification that one's going to happen tomorrow on the Washington Mall. And I believe it's kind of connotation, the way it's being framed, marketed in social media, is that it's the protest to protest the hijacking of our Constitution. Yeah, but that certainly makes a whole lot of sense given Doge and all things, the first 50, I guess, were 53 days of Trump, and the calamity of this absolute blitzkrieg of corruption and insanity and stupidity and all of the other things that are involved. And one thing I wanted to really touch down upon, and especially as it relates back to this sort of post-election redesign of our Clean New Deal website, because people, when I started my journey 13 years ago, is really what it comes down to. It depends on when you mark the time, but my colleague Eric Vaughn and I got on the road to make a documentary film to try to figure out what the hell was going on in the aftermath of the 2008 great financial crisis, during the time that we just happened to kick off with the Occupy Wall Street movement. So one thing led to another, and Eric and I traveled around the entire country. We covered about 3,700 miles. We got to 33 encampments, and then we landed. We started the day the Occupy Wall Street movement started, and then we landed in the corridor between the Beltway and D.C. and then into New York City into Zuccotti Park. The day it got shut down by the NYPD, and I swear to God, I was on this massive, yellow brick road journey, and the last piece of the puzzle was basically Oz and trying to uncover all of the things that were going on. And one thing that we discovered was we didn't set out to make a documentary about Occupy Wall Street. We set out to make a documentary about what caused Occupy Wall Street, what was creating this massive economic meltdown, all of the calamity, all of the turmoil, all of the types of situations that are happening at this very moment. And I'm a veteran, and I learned a lot. And what I noticed about Occupy Wall Street, which at that time would ultimately give birth to Bernie Sanders and, basically his, I'd say launch into the national spotlight, but it also led to the Tea Party, which was funded by the Koch brothers. And I was literally in their headquarters in Topeka, Kansas, halfway through the journey on this yellow brick road to make the actual, this film that I made called Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream. And I'll never forget. I mean, these people were savvy. They were incredible. And we went toe to toe about what was going on and their look at it. And it was just ultimately, I learned about, I guess, the resources and the capacity that the Koch brothers had, basically poured into America. Well, at that point, it was Americans for Prosperity, but it was the Tea Party. And the Tea Party is what gave rise to, quite frankly, MAGA and the opportunity for Donald Trump. And oh, yeah, by the way, they funded the Heritage Foundation that created Project 2025. And then, yeah, the unitary presidency that is a dictator. There's kind of the wet dream of what the Koch brothers were involved with the whole time, not to mention this long march since the 80s that has basically created corporations above the law in the United States because of a bunch of crazy stuff that I've revealed through all of this panoply of material that I've churned out over the course of the last 13 years. And just as a sidebar, the con is available at thecon.tv for free because all the American people buy our lies. But that's the blueprint that you would then understand would get you to ultimately what we show you in the cleannewdeal.org, which has all the answers. And the reason I'm compelling you to wrap your head around all of this in context to what people are compelled because of what's happening with Doge, where scientists and teachers and people in cancer research, and the list goes on, and the most vulnerable being squeezed by the richest in our society. It's all the manifestation, it's all the culmination, it's all the consequence of everything that I am showing you completely. And if protests began to manifest all over the country, reacting in a way that Occupy Wall Street did. And by the way, Occupy Wall Street definitely had one thing that rose above all else that really changed the playing field for how we look at the world ever since, was the 99% against the 1%. Obviously, the disparity of wealth, which has gotten monumentally worse since that time because of everything that I'm revealing to you. That led me to Federal Reserve Act 13.3, which is the largest backdoor illegal funneling of tens of trillions of dollars to the largest criminal racketeering conspiracy in the history of the world that never ended, which put the billionaires above market forces and the law. So does it make sense just on its face, based on a quick introduction, if you're just seeing me for the first time, how it's possible for all of these insane things that are happening that now are leading people to go to the streets, that if we don't come together in a very cohesive and smart way and break out of silos, they're going to be able to thwart this just like they did with all of the state police around the country, or city police, or the NYPD, and they brutalized the Occupy Wall Street movement. They came down hard. They shut it down. And they shut it down fast. And it was coordinated. It was concerted. It happened during the Obama administration because it'd gotten too close to the truth, quite frankly. But then it dissipated and it saturated and it basically stepped on itself, or it stepped on a shovel, the proverbial shovel, like sponge, sideshow Bob, where you get stuck in the face, where you can't see the forest for the trees. And that's what compelled me to keep moving forward, while my first film, Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream, was prologue to what we uncovered in the con, which is the blueprint for all this works. But unfortunately, I got quashed by the Borg of corruption, because the company that was put into position to basically float the United States was none other than BlackRock, that managed Federal Reserve Act 13.3 to their advantage, and those that they picked and chose winners in this socialism for corruption is really what it comes down to. And so ultimately, there's, like, many years ago, I just got inundated with the imagery of 13 for some reason. And it set me off on this adventure where I learned that, oh, wow, 13 kind of emanates from a lot of things that are important to me. Like, one, the history of the universe is 13.8 billion years old, but there was 13 colonies, and the American people came together to revolt against King George III, which was predicated on this long voyage of the law, basically from the notion of escaping through Exodus the tyranny of Pharaoh at the time, to create the law and order of society that would be premised above tyranny. And that freedom, that liberty for justice for all, predicated on the law, that would lead to the revolution of the United States and separation of powers, and the nature of all things Bill of Rights through the Constitution, and the separation of powers to prevent what exactly we're in the midst of again, which is tyranny. And 13 is the number that personifies all of that for the founders. In fact, when the founders were putting together the seal, where they were putting together the dollar bill, where they were configuring out of the 13 colonies based on this knowledge that came, from, quite frankly, the Knights Templars through the Masons and then the Freemasons, but they were all learned men, and it was just, this guiding light of liberty and justice for all, which of course came through the Statue of Liberty, which was, gifted to us by the French, after, of course, their, struggle with liberty as well, right? And so the notion of 13 is the number of revolution. The number of 13 is the notion of universal harmony, which can only come after a revolution against tyranny. And the light of God, which is the eye of providence, and the light of truth, which is what I'm bringing, is the big bang of truth that forces light into the darkness. So 13 is this number that has been very, compelling and behind the scenes, and kind of like this, mystical sort of wind or uplift of my wings to keep me flying, like the eagle that has 13, has a talons and 13 arrows and 13 quivers. Just the representation just goes on and on and on. I'm not doing an incredibly effective way at describing it, but it's just so unbelievably powerful. And I'll end up with this. Look, 1,300 people got axed from the Department of Education the other day, which was just insane. Another part of Doge. There's 13 billionaires that are in the Trump cabinet. I still can't escape this 13 situation, which for me, I don't care if anybody else knows, but that's the causation. And that's why we've put in our incredible website, the Clean New Deal, that really gets us all on the same page, gives all of this information that we spent millions and millions of dollars to aggregate to provide for free. And while the Supreme Court had made necessary the idea through Citizens United that you don't have a political voice unless you put skin in the game. And look what obviously Elon Musk did with 277 million to become the de facto president that's destroying our country. And there's more. What did I hear today? I heard that there was 13 inspector generals that are the types of people within the system to hold power to account that were fired. I mean, again, it goes on and on and on, and it's kind of silly, but it's not, because I am asking you to consider donating $13 to get on board. If you read the cleannewdeal.org and you're like, my God, he's telling the truth. And if you watch the con and you're like, oh my God, I get it. Holy cow, I'm in. Yeah, I'm not big on donations. So, we also created merchandise, and the merchandise is absolutely magnificent. It's the answer to MAGA. And oh yeah, by the way, it's made in America. So look, holy cow, people, that was 13 minutes. Felt like a lifetime. Usually I talk for an hour. I got to end it at 13 because I'm trying to be in the Matrix. That's all this is. This all feels like the Matrix. Thank you for listening. Please check out everything, thecon.tv, thecleannewdeal.org. And just know that your voice only comes from money. And if we galvanize by the millions, and 13 million of us come together, we'll raise $169 million to turn the page on the corruption in both political parties. We've got to create a new political party, or we've got to reform the Democratic Party. The Republicans are too far gone. And if we don't do this now, we're not going to get it back in our lifetimes. Onwards and upwards.